I'm continuing a series where I do an in-depth analysis of the lightsaber duels of the Star Wars films. I have experience with both European fencing and Japanese kendo, the two main pillars on which lightsaber combat was based, so I'd like to put that experience to use. Last time I did the second ever lightsaber duel on Dagobah, so now we're on to Cloud City. Peter Diamond remains the stunt coordinator for Empire Strikes Back, and we have Bob Anderson as the stunt double for David Prowse's Darth Vader. As mentioned last time, Bob Anderson has a long and impressive career as a fight choreographer, including such highlights as The Highlander, The Three Musketeers, The Princess Bride, The Mask of Zorro, The Pirates of the Caribbean, and The Lord of the Rings. Regarding choreographing swordsmanship, Anderson is the gold standard, the man who stabbed Errol Flynn. Yet, reaching the pinnacle of movie sword fighting is one thing. So let's focus on what I believe is his much more significant and meaningful achievement. Bob Anderson represented his country of Great Britain in the 1952 Summer Olympics, making it to the quarterfinals in the individual event and tying for 5th in the team event. He also competed in the 1950 and 1953 World Championships. In European fencing, there are 3 subsections referred to as weapons. These are foil, epee, and saber. Each weapon has a different focus and style. Bob Anderson primarily practiced saber. While fencing is typically associated with stabbing, saber is actually a cutting weapon. It is generally considered to be the most aggressive of the 3 forms, yet as any good martial artist, Bob was experienced in all forms of his art, winning the Royal Marines Saber Championship 6 times, the Foil Championship 5 times, and the Epee Championship once. He was also the 1950 European Military Saber Champion and the Corbel Cup International Saber Champion in 1951 and 1952. When he retired from competition, Bob Anderson became the fencing instructor for Britain's national fencing team, a post he held for more than 20 years. To say this man was qualified is an understatement. It is a privilege that such a master swordsman decided to work with actors, bringing his Olympic-level skill to the screen. That being said, we must keep in mind who he's working with. Bob can't show the full extent of his skill because he needs the actors he's fighting to appear to be a challenge for him. He is severely limited by his opponents. Mark Hamill had no prior experience with fencing of any kind when joining Star Wars. For this film, he did have a crash course lasting about 4 months.
I took karate, kendo, and did a little bit of weight training. They sort of want to mix that martial arts flavor in with the traditional foil fencing.
That's good. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, we have to rest now.
Okay. Okay. All right.
I can't talk now. I'm out of breath.
And now I know many people who are impressed by such a lengthy and rigorous training period, and with the actor's abilities to master so many skills. Yet I want to add a little bit of context. When I began my fencing training as a child, I trained for about a full year before I was allowed to even touch a weapon. That year was spent studying proper form, positioning, and technique. A foundation must be properly laid before anything is built on it if you want it to hold up. The amount of training required to be competent at something is enormous. To master it, staggering. Movie production simply doesn't have the time or money to spend sending actors off for years to train. This minuscule time of 4 months is therefore crammed with lessons only half learned. Principles and true understanding of the art aren't prioritized in favor of general fitness and memorizing movements. But I am speaking generally. Some actors have better training, more natural skill, or just a greater interest in swordsmanship than others. So, as before, we'll judge Mark Hamill's skill level when we see it. This duel we have Mark Hamill versus Bob Anderson under the direction of Peter Diamond. Let us begin. Luke is first to ignite his saber and gets into his guard position. He holds his lightsaber in front of him, the tip at about eye level, and he widens his stance. It's not the deepest stance, but I don't see much wrong with this. It even looks better than his guard on Dagobah, so excellent start. Once again, Vader responds by getting into his own guard, and they cross blades in the same starting ritual as before. Some of this is camera angles, but notice how close the two combatants are. They are so close that either fighter could reach the other in a single attack. Various martial arts, including kendo, start their matches within striking distance, though fencing starts much further apart. Personally, since this isn't a sport but a matter of life and death, I would keep a wider distance, but there's nothing inherently right or wrong with starting this close. I should also note Darth Vader's famous one-handed style making its debut here. Doubtlessly, this was brought by Bob Anderson, as fencing uses one-handed weapons while kendo uses two-handed ones. I've stated in a previous video that I believe lightsabers should be one-handed, as it allows for considerably more finesse and control. Two-handed styles do allow for more strength, but a fighter doesn't need to be excessively strong to block a two-handed attack with a single hand. Martial arts are about redirecting energy rather than meeting strength against strength, so the benefits of a two-handed style aren't all that significant when dealing with lightsabers that can cut through anything with ease, while the precision and dexterity of a one-handed style are still significant. The first problem comes with Anderson's stance. Bob Anderson is standing with his shoulders squared with Mark Hamill's. In martial arts, you want to make your body as small as possible. Your body is your opponent's target, so making it smaller gives them a smaller target. The main way to do this is to turn sideways. The side of a torso is much thinner than the front of it, so martial artists will twist their body to the side as much as possible. This obviously puts one arm forward and one arm back. The front arm is your weapon arm because your blade is your means to both attack and defend. Just like in soccer, you want your defense to be in front of the net. And if you can hit your opponent before he can hit you, you'll win. So offense should be in front too. So the fact that Vader isn't turned means he isn't in the best position. Bob Anderson knows this, I have no doubt. I'm sure they're trying to not be too visually different from the last movie, and when you have a two-handed weapon, your shoulders necessarily have to be more squared off than with a one-handed one. We actually see a few moments where Bob rotates to a proper position, only to square back up. So I really do think it's because they want Vader to look the same as he did in the first movie. But that choice sacrifices realism, as that is the wrong way to stand for a one-handed weapon. Luke makes the first strike this time around, yet he makes a huge action, swinging his blade a full 360 degrees to strike at Vader. Mark Hamill further telegraphs his movement by lurching his body back and forth, the clear sign of a beginner who doesn't know how to balance his weight. This is a bad move and bad form, giving Vader every opportunity to counterattack and knocking himself off balance. When he is blocked, he is very low, meaning he either missed Vader's head or wasn't going for it. If he missed a stationary target, that's pretty bad. If he wasn't going for Vader's head, then why perform such a large overhead swing? Now, to preempt any comments, yes, I know, Luke is not fully trained at this point. There's meant to be a noticeable skill gap between the two. But that's not what I'm talking about. When I give a demerit, it's for the kind of mistakes only beginners would make, something that would get you killed in a second. What I mean is, even younglings should be able to point out what Luke did wrong here. As in the vision, Vader patiently waits, blocking Luke's attack once it arrives, performing the move Luke seemed to have attempted on Dagobah. That is, using the momentum of his block to carry his blade into an attack. This is excellent and smooth, eliminating all unnecessary movements to be quick and efficient. Luke blocks this riposte, and the two fighters return to their starting positions. This reset is fine. Each fighter learned something new about their opponents via that exchange, so are now planning how to implement that new information. Their blades are at the ready though, so as not to be caught off guard while they plan. Once again, Luke initiates the engagement, and once again by lurching his body and massively winding up for his attack. Honestly, Vader would have to try so hard not to kill Luke here. Vader has his lightsaber forward, and Luke charges forward with his lightsaber behind him. He'd skewer himself on Vader's blade if Vader didn't move it out of the way. Vader blocks this attack with a high parry, this time reaching above his head, yet overhead blocks are supposed to slope away from the body, like we see here in kendo. This is because, unlike in movies, blades can slide across blades. Luke's strike is moving down, so if it were to slide down Vader's blade, it would cut off Vader's hand, and it's too soon in the fight for a Skywalker to lose a hand. If, however, Vader angled his block the opposite way, Luke's blade would slide harmlessly off to the side. Vader winds up and pushes Luke back, knocking him to the ground. As discussed in the previous video, a quick push and strike is something actually done in kendo when the distance gets too close. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing a massive overhead push while Luke helplessly tries to push back. An actual swordsman would feel Vader put everything he had into this massive push and simply disengage under his blade to stab him. This move is to demonstrate Vader is strong, but does nothing to demonstrate actual swordsmanship. Despite knocking Luke to the ground, Vader does nothing to capitalize on this advantage. Yet this isn't a fault, but rather a sign that Vader has no interest in killing Luke. Luke gets his blade up so that he can either defend or attack, then he gets to his feet. Appropriate priorities. For the third time, they go to their starting positions. This time, Luke moves more cautiously. Vader mirrors his movements, stepping back as Luke steps forward. They both step again, nothing too remarkable, but it does show strategic development from Luke as he changes things up this time around. Though it also shows this is an incredibly static fight, with these slow and cautious steps being the only movement we've seen so far. Luke decides those 2 steps were the only changes he needed to make, and so, for a third time, winds up and swings like a wild man. He strikes to Vader's right shoulder, then left, then down low, all of which Vader blocks. Luke advances with each attack, and Vader gives ground with each block. This is excellent for both Luke and Vader. We are finally seeing movement with an attack. When an opponent pushes with an attack, it is a good strategy to give ground to block so that your opponent doesn't get too close. Everything takes time, including blocking. If your opponent is getting close to you, then they have to cover less distance to hit you, meaning their attacks will take less time. That means you will have less time to block, so stepping back gives you the time you need to block properly. After his third attack, Luke stands out in his lunge for no apparent reason. And when you move closer to your opponent, you are in danger, so why stay there? The only reason to get so close to someone with a lightsaber is to try to hit them with your lightsaber. Yet Luke doesn't make a 4th attack. So he doesn't attack and he doesn't retreat, leaving himself stranded. Vader then performs a huge swing at Luke's head, which Luke blocks rather than cutting Vader down while Vader's lightsaber is behind his back. Then... oh, what did I just watch? The two suddenly decide they're at a dance party and start spinning and twirling around. Does anyone actually think this looks cool? Does anyone genuinely believe that turning your back to your opponent is a good move? I'm actually curious because there are so many spins in movies, so someone must think they're cool or something. But who and why? They clash back and forth for a bit, using a twirling motion to push their opponent's blade out of the way. First Vader does it to Luke's blade, then Luke does it to Vader's blade. This is a real move to redirect blades, so good job. Yet they keep holding their blocks in these blade locks. Just make up your mind. Do you want to finesse and use your opponent's strength against him, or do you want to hack and push like a bulldozer? The two then do the very Hollywood /high/high/low. It's in so many movies. Who can say who is attacking and who is defending? Yet anyone can see that neither of the combatants would actually hit the other one. Vader then goes into a big swing which Luke ducks under, causing Vader's swing to cut through a nearby pipe. This is bad form on Vader's part because, in combat, you have to expect your attacks may be dodged or blocked, or fail for some reason or another. You have to make sure that, should your attack fail, you're in a good position to defend yourself. But where is Vader? He put so much into that attack that his momentum carried him way off, exposing his shoulder and back to counterattack. When I was learning kendo, I was taught to try to strike 6 inches through the target. That way, if my attack failed, my blade would stop 6 inches past my opponent. Being that close, I could try a second attack or to defend myself. Yet this is obviously just a cheap way to get an explosion into a fight. Luke then moves out of Vader's immediate reach. Coupling this with his earlier duck, and we're finally seeing distance and movement to counterattack blade work rather than just more blade work. They return to their starting positions once again, but now Luke is hunched, leaning his head forward. This is a bad position as it puts your head close to your enemy, and heads tend to be pretty important. A bit of dialogue, and then Luke, for now the 4th time, launches himself in a massive attack. He doesn't wind up as much this time. It's still not good, but it's better. Though no points for creativity. He seems to slide with his attack, falling to the ground as soon as Vader blocks him. This movement doesn't make much sense. He wasn't knocked back, he just falls. Obviously, they wanted him in a prone position for the next shot, but he doesn't get there in a natural way. We again have some meaningless high and low strikes, and then a repeat of the twirl block from Vader, this time disarming Luke. This is a good disarm, so I'll ignore the repetitive routine. Vader then winds up with a massive blow to the unarmed Luke, who rolls out of the way. Considering Vader isn't trying to kill Luke here, I'm going to say that this egregious telegraphing was done on purpose so that Luke would have time to escape while still feeling like his life is on the line. Vader jumps down the stairs after Luke, keeping the pressure on, but not performing any strikes. This fits perfectly with Vader's plan to guide Luke where he wants him without having to deliver the Emperor damaged goods. Vader lets Luke get to his feet and they exchange a few lines. Luke keeps his eyes on Vader and keeps his distance from him, but is oblivious to everything else, as when Vader performs yet another huge windup, Luke backs up into a pit. Let me talk about one of my favorite elements of dueling: psychological tactics. A sword fight is as much a mental battle as it is a physical one. A strategy I enjoy is to suddenly stomp my foot very loud. In a duel, the fighters are highly attuned to every movement and sound, because the slightest of each can predict what's coming. Even highly trained fencers can give away tiny clues in their movements which the perceptive can pick up on and interpret. Since I know my opponent is looking for a tiny clue, I give them a loud one. I can startle a reaction out of them, thus find out what they're planning. Once I can get an opponent to act on my cue instead of his own, I can control him and win the match. In the same way, Vader makes an over-the-top motion not because he wants to attack Luke, but because he wants Luke to react. He's controlling Luke's movements without Luke even realizing it.
All too easy.
Vader watches his son on the monkey bars for a bit, then makes a big swing, once again telegraphing his move to ensure Luke can easily dodge. Luke does a flip while Vader patiently waits, then uses the exhaust pipe to distract Vader. Good use of the environment. Luke is a bit bold here, electing to stand still with his back to Vader as he recalls his lightsaber. Yes, Vader is reeling, but Luke doesn't know for how long. Luke is trying not to lose ground in order to capitalize on off-balancing Vader, but in so doing is leaving himself incredibly vulnerable. It's a bad trade-off, but I'll give him a pass here and say this is a characterization of Luke being overly aggressive and rash. Then they wrestle with their blades. Reset again. Vader to start this time. lurching with a low attack which Luke awkwardly blocks and counters, with Vader blocking. A bit of dialogue while they wrestle some more. Then Vader pulls his blade back and Luke's doesn't move, showing that the actors weren't actually pushing their blades against each other. If they were, Mark Hamill's momentum would have carried his blade off to the side. Vader does 2 attacks to one side, then 2 to the other. Very Hollywood again, but these ones are a bit more believable. Luke flips over Vader, then winds up so much that Vader has enough time to turn around and block his attack. Luke continues to press his attack with very wide swings, one side to the other, pushing and pushing until Vader gets pushed off the edge of the platform. I don't know, guys. This whole segment is rather blah. There's nothing quite so bad as before, but there's nothing that good either. Luke is hacking away with huge swings, though seeming to be holding back the actual connections, likely to not break the props. He's trying for different targets, yes, but he's doing the same type of strikes at the same speed over and over again. There's no strategy here, just striking the corners of a square. I'm just going to give the whole segment 2 demerits for the bland and sloppy attacks, but 1 merit for having Luke at least aim for different areas and keep advancing with his attacks. Vader tries hiding, but forgets how loud his breathing is. They get in their guards at a respectful distance this time, and Vader goes to a 2-handed stance. This, however, is a ruse, as Vader starts pelting Luke with different things from around the room. An excellent distraction followed by an immediate exploitation that Luke is barely able to defend. A couple blows and a twirling block from Luke to get Vader's blade out of the way, and since Luke loves standing still and staring, Vader is able to throw stuff at his head pretty easily. He doesn't follow up with an attack this time, as now is the time for showing off. Luke does a comically huge wind-up and is appropriately smacked in the face. Vader realizes he's been trying too hard and relaxes a little as Luke demonstrates Jedi-like reflexes. The window's smashed, and we move to the final battle arena. This time Vader remembers about his breathing, so gets a surprise attack on Luke in one of the cooler jump scares in cinema. Vader, using his 2-handed style, starts winding up and hacking, pushing Luke back but without an ounce of skill, topping it off with yet another wrestling of the blades. Vader pushes Luke back and swings so incredibly wide a half-dozen times, all to ensure that we get a bunch of sparks everywhere. Are you getting tired of these blade binds? I know I am. Oh, I see. I guess there's just an unending enthusiasm for these. Vader pushes Luke down and points out he could kill Luke right then. Luke fights desperately, and Vader's swings are wide enough to give him time to stand up. They both swing wildly with huge attack after huge attack. Luke ducks under one rather than blocking, so here's a merit for switching up the strategy. Why not follow up his advantage? Well, because he's not really in a position to. He's in survival mode now, so, very appropriately, uses his opening to get away. Vader does an even bigger swing and a miss. Another circling of the blades to get in position, and off with the hand. This wasn't a particularly smooth action, with a distinct pause between the 2 movements, but the strategy behind it is sound and gets past Luke's defenses and exploits a vulnerability. Then, some very epic dialogue, but unfortunately, it has no bearing on the duel itself. At the end of the duel, we have 21 merits and 22 demerits, meaning 48.84% merit in our 3rd lightsaber duel, our highest rated lightsaber duel yet. It also has the most points in this duel, the first duel having only a combined 22 merits and demerits, and the second having only 9. Lightsaber dueling has come a long way, not just in swordsmanship, but in cinematography and narrative. So much more is happening in this duel, and you can see the thought and effort that went into it. It's hard for me to say who won this duel, but I'm going to settle on Bob Anderson. Though his movements were rather clunky, we saw a notable change in fighting styles and choreography here that reflect real-world fencing. As an Olympic fencer, I can only assume it was Bob's influence that brought this about. Yet Peter Diamond is a close second. There are many creative new strategies and story elements woven skillfully into the fight choreography, such as the first instance of force integration into a duel. This duel is narrative heavy, and Peter Diamond did great to let that shine through. We can learn so much of Luke's naive bravery and Vader's casual supremacy. Unfortunately, Diamond couldn't help cramming the duel full of spins and blade binds. Third goes to Mark Hamill, who certainly shows he is trying to demonstrate proper form, yet comes across as a novice when it comes to swordsmanship. So, there you have it. Perhaps the most famous duel in Star Wars history. But these are my thoughts. What are yours? Leave them in the comments below. But for now, that's all from me. Thanks for watching.